Adams Board of Selectmen's meeting is now in session, Wednesday, November 14, 2018. Could you please all join us in standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have two sets, and all four of us can vote for these. October 16th, 2018, and regular meeting, I believe, and October 17th, 2018 meeting. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and approve them as submitted for the October 16th, 2018 meeting and October 17th, 2018 meeting.
We have a motion by Christine. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jim. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none. Unanimous decision. Next, we have public comment. Anyone who in the audience who would like to address the board with anything that is not on the agenda for this evening? Okay, Kelly?
The treasurer for the town of Adams. I just wanted to let everybody know and the public know that I will have extended hours on November 4th, the Saturday, right after Thanksgiving.
The 24th.
Yeah, the 24th.
Yeah.
From 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. because the taxes are due Monday, the 26th. So I'm just giving an extra day. So hopefully everybody will be able to come in and pay on time, so.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. Under old business, we have the second reading and approval of changes to the Council on Aging drug and alcohol policy. The first reading was approved at the last meeting. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the second reading and final approval of the changes to the Council on Aging drug and alcohol policy with the changes reflected to meet the federal regulations.
We have a motion by Christine. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jim. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Unanimous decision. New business, the execution of note sale documents. Kelly?
I have them on your desk, and they're just papers that the town meeting approved for the emergency borrowing. You guys need to sign all these.
Okay.
Where this is, here, on each one of these. Just so I can send it in tomorrow, and the money will be put into our account on November 27th.
Could you go to the podium and just kind of give a high-level overview of what this is for those
I
that...
don't know what it is.
But you, I mean, could you talk about the rate maybe?
Yeah, the rate would be good. It's a 2.5%. Just sign the darn thing?
It's for the emergency borrowing that you guys went to town meeting for.
Okay, so...
For the roadways and the drainage and some other improvements for 2.5.
Yep.
And the bids came in on Tuesday, and Century Bank was the low bidder with a 2.5 interest rate on the full amount, 2.5.
Okay, very good.
That's great.
It's good rate.
It is.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
actually the highest was 2.65.
Okay. And we continue to work with our state legislatures to get, to obtain funding from the state. Hopefully that will come through. We'll continue, this board will continue to work with them to get the additional funding. Any questions, any concerns about the borrowing that town meeting has approved?
Just once again, thank you to town meeting for approving the borrowing, and thank you to Kelly for working on the paperwork.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure on this? Do we have a motion?
Is it a motion to execute the note sale documents as submitted?
Okay, we have a motion by Christine. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Second by Jim. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
You want me to wait, are you gonna do that now, so I can take them back?
Sure.
Sure.
They're gonna be FedExed out first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Till after the meeting?
I can bring it to your office.
We can-
Billy.
Huh?
I can bring it to your
You'll
office.
take them?
Yeah, we can pass it around as we're
Okay.
listening. All right, thank you, Kelly. Next, we have, is John here? Yeah. Next, we have a update on chlorination and water monitoring equipment, the Adams Fire District. We have John Barrett.
How you doing, guys? So currently where we're at is on April of 2017, the fire district obtained what's called a conditional chlorine permit from the DEP. These licenses, permits rather, are usually 2 years in age, so that was set to expire April 10th of 2019, at which time we had submitted to them through our engineering company plans that they approved to install a temporary chlorination system in all 3 of our wells. And that was pretty much the status that we were taking, at which point then we had the boil water, which occurred August 23rd, 2018. Upon that, I pretty much knew that we would end up chlorinating on a full-time basis. So at that point, I instructed the engineers to kind of move forward with the project. At that point, we were 70% complete in engineering of the project. Again, that was initially a project in which we were going to install temporary. So that entailed the minimum of safeguards for chlorine injection and analyzing. Since that has happened, the scope of the project has changed. We were initially thinking it was going to be about $750,000. We had proceeded to the state to get funding for that project through an SRF loan that the DEP issues. We have since been instructed by our engineers, in essence, a lot of it's due to the time constraints of the deadline that was imposed when the DEP discontinued the boil water. So we were originally planning on having a system in when our permit was set to expire by April 10th, 2019. When the boil water was completed, they said we would do this by December 31st of this year, which took this project and crunched it down into 4 months, which is near impossible. We literally just got permission to award from the DEP for the project. All the engineering has to go through the DEP. We submitted to them our plans for a final permit, which entails a more adequate system that will bring the district into the future with a lot more safeguards than what the original design had. And I believe that's the way for us to move forward. There's no sense in engineering the bare minimum just to take it out and spend more money to engineer it again to put the system that really should be in there. That's the standpoint we were pretty much at. We awarded the project on November 9th. We actually got the funding approval on the 13th. So I don't see how, and by the time that everything goes, we're talking a month to be able to get all these systems, a $950,000 project in a month's time. It's just not going to happen. So I've essentially requested an extension from the DEP to put us back into the confines of our original conditional permit, which would have been April 10th, 2019. The DEP has agreed to allow us to do that with 2 well stations, and the 4th one we would have to bring up to their standards. We may or may not meet that. I'm hoping we will, but I don't know as if we will. So at this point, essentially the safeguards that they're looking for is to monitor chlorine residual that we are injecting. We are well below the legal limit. Right now, we're usually around 0.3 to 0.4 parts per million. The legal limit is 4. The dose that we have to maintain as a chlorine residual is 0.2 parts per million. So it's not much. We are monitoring chlorine residual 210 times a month until we get this equipment in. And that's essentially where we stand right now.
Thanks, John. The board have questions?
Yeah, through the chair. I was just wondering, did you come to any conclusion of why our water became tainted?
You know, it's a big problem in the water industry as a whole. Total coliform, which is why we now operate under a protocol from the DEP called the revised total coliform rule, because I think the DEP realized that the rule in essence was too stringent, so they revised it and kind of backed down what you really had to do if you had a total coliform violation, which is it's in the air, it's everywhere, it's not particularly harmful to anybody, and that's what caused the chlorination to begin with. Adams is a little unique in the fact that we inject polyphosphate. Polyphosphate has known to be really it's a food for bacteria growth. There's not a lot of systems that inject polyphosphate without chlorination. So that inhibits the total coliform growth anywhere. And then when you combine that with all of the severe weathers, the hot, the cold, all that water is sitting in tanks and it's cooking, and we're having severe storms that are churning up water supplies. And that's how it happens. And originally we just had total coliform violations, which resulted in us actually having to do the chlorination project to begin with. They had issued an ACO back in January of 2016, which required us to install the temporary chlorination, which is really how this project got started.
And lastly, you just brought up a fact that I wasn't aware of. So we were already adding polyphosphate into our water system?
Yes, we have always.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering who and when was that decision made?
Ooh, I think that was actually installed in the system, don't quote me on this, I think
Yeah.
in the 90s.
No.
It was quite a long time ago. Polyphosphate is really good. So what polyphosphate does is it sequesters iron and manganese, and more so what it really does is it coats our pipes. So it coats the pipes and it prevents the leaching of iron from our cast iron pipes. It also prevents the leaching of lead into our drinking water, and it also prevents the leaching of copper, which everybody has in their houses. So we test for lead and copper. We're always well under the limits. And it also helps us because of the fact that the pH of our water is very high. It's 7.6, 7.8. It's really alkaline. If we had more acidic water, there would be more problem, because it's acidic, of the metals leaching into our water. So it's good in both ways. We're using a phosphate. It coats the pipes, which minimizes tuberculation, just keeps the pipes really spick and span inside, and it prevents the leaching of the metals into our drinking water, including in your house. It just and polyphosphate is essentially it's a food. It's derived. It's in a lot of your food as a preservative.
I think that's all I have.
Okay, Jim?
You know, is the United States Farm up here what governs our water testing?
The EPA governs it, so they are what's called the primacy. And then they actually govern the state, which is my primacy. And so so they set guidelines. The United States Environmental Protection Association sets minimum guidelines. It's up to the primacy to accept their minimum, and they can go higher than what they accept. Massachusetts usually is well known for going higher than what the EPA standards are. And then when it gets down to me, I have to abide by the standards that the state sets. And the state has to abide by federal standards.
Christine?
I'm all set. Thanks.
Thank you. I enjoyed your talk to us. I learned quite a bit.
I just have a couple questions, maybe just one, but with this new equipment, is it going to minimize the E. coli getting back into the system? What is this going to do? I know it's, you know, it's mandated and the communities are all going towards this. What is this going to do?
We were one of the last few, very, very, very few public water supplies in the state that don't chlorinate.
Okay.
There's very, very few of them. And, you know, so total coliform can get into, so we have tanks in which we store the water in. Them tanks have to have vents on the top. You know, you can have pollen. Anything enters into there. You can also have what's called stratification of a tank and turnover, which will create a total coliform violation. So as the water sits in a tank, it becomes, especially with extreme temperatures, it becomes stratified. You ever go swimming? Feels really warm on top, cold on the bottom. That is in essence stratification. Our tanks will stratify. What happens is the warmer water will sit to the top, and then if any particles come into the vents that have to be there, that sits on the surface of the water. At a certain point, that water becomes hotter, denser from all the materials that have got into there, and then that's when you have what's called turnover. The tank turns over, and then you get all that water that had sat at the top, and now that's what's going into the public water system. So turnover and stratification can create that. And that's a well-known fact. The fire district has, we're right in the middle of the project right now, put mixers in the tanks, which will mix the 2 million gallon tank and try to prevent turnover. The chlorine also will now, in addition, fight the total coliform issues. You know, you still can have total coliform with chlorination, but it's less likely. It's to safeguard it. And another thing is too is we are under the groundwater rule. So being under the groundwater rule, we only have to treat chlorine at the pump station at that minimum level of 0.2. If we were a surface water, you know, they have to maintain a residual in the entire system of that. So legally, we don't even have to maintain a chlorine residual in the distribution. But at this point, we are monitoring all the chlorine residuals all throughout town, which is how we arrive at 210 tests a month.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just thought of one, well, not question. I know this might be too early to ask this, but will the borrowing of this money cause the price of water to our users go up?
Most definitely, yeah. And that's the unfortunate thing. So now with with everything that we're going through and with the time constraints that have really pushed this project through, we're estimating it's going to cost more money than maybe it would have initially. And so that's where we're at pretty much with that project. So yeah, it is. It's unfortunately, you know, the system is old, and it needs maintenance, and where it really hasn't had any maintenance. So we're hoping that we can raise rates at a steady pace, and then, you know, not avoid this. You know, it's better off to raise rates slowly over time than to realize you have a problem and then raise them crazily. And that's what we're trying to avoid right now.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. And finally, the confidence of some of the residents in Adams in their water is not very high. And after the Adams had to deal with the situation of boiling water and
Yes.
things like that, I've read that at least 2 more communities in the state had the same problem.
Yes.
They had to boil water for 2-3 days. It's
Yeah.
not unique to this community. It happens. For the water department, how can we get, because you're going to need people using water, right? Because if they don't, then the few that do, then the more that costs, whatever. But is there a way we can, do you have any thoughts on the confidence of the residents? Because a lot of residents just use bottled water. Take their
Right.
showers in the water, of course, but
Right.
they just use for coffee and everything, because they have this thing about what happened the last time. Eventually it may fade, but is there do you guys have anything you're gonna do to try to?
Here's what I enjoy.
Water's okay to drink,
Here's what I enjoy to tell people.
Yeah.
Here in the town of Adams, you can come down and you can meet who gives you your water. We, as well as every other public water system, issues every year what's called a CCR report. It's a Consumer Confidence Report, and that is the year report of everything we've tested, everything that has happened. It's the whole synopsis of a year. It's out every year in our book. It's called the CCR report. I believe I do deliver one here. So you can read that and you can see everything in your water. Try doing that with your bottled water, because if you look at the bottled water, it comes from a PWS. There's a public water supply number on there, but you don't get that kind of information from the bottled water suppliers. Look at them. They're all PWS. They all come from a public water supply. The only difference is you really don't know what's in that water. Here, you know who's giving you your water, and you know what's exactly in the water here. I believe Berkshire Eagle, somebody just had a report on it, and we were rated the second, I forget exactly how it was worded, but we tied with Cheshire. I can't remember. We rated number 2 for the least amount of toxins in the water. It was actually just in the paper right after our boil water, and they did make reference to that.
Right, and I did see that.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay.
So we, it is what it is. It's unfortunate, but really we're not in that bad of a situation, and we do have some of the cleanest water around.
Great. And I think what's also going to help is from time to time, periodically, you show up and the board of directors show up and give us some updates to the community, and I think that'll help quell some of the concern of the water. The water's good to drink, so.
I drink it.
Me too.
I got one.
All right, anything else on the board?
Yeah, I got
Go
one
ahead.
more question. I know the nature of the test. I was involved in water testing,
Yes.
and it's what, 48 hours for the culture to form,
Correct.
correct? Now, after that when you get the 48 hours up, and also we got that's high in chloroform, but it could be a false test, a bad test, because I could have breathed on it and contaminated it.
Correct.
So do you blow the whistle after the 48 hours, or do you go back and
It
retest?
is not, so how it works is, when we take a test, we have 24 hours to get it to the lab. We normally will take tests and we get that to the lab that day. It's usually hours after the bottle has been placed into the sample bottle. At that point, they take it and put it into an incubator. It depends on how busy they are. Sometimes it's an hour, it's 2-hour turnover. At that point, they have 24 hours of time in the oven to culture it. And then when it comes out, they will notify us, and then we immediately take resamples. Then the resamples go back to the lab, and now you can't notify before you take your resamples, because like you said, you could have a false positive. You have to make sure it's positive before you notify. So then them samples go back to the lab, the whole process starts over again, and then after they notify you, that usually triggers, depending on what it is, on how the circumstances are going to be notified to the public.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Just clarify that for
Sure.
a lot of people.
Yes, it's all legal. Everything has to be sent to the DEP with exact time frames. And all the samples, there's documentation on the whole process. It's called a chain of custody form.
I know it's a very delicate test.
Yes, it is.
Very delicate.
Don, anything else?
No, no.
Okay, John, thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next on the agenda, we have a liquor license multiple amendment application. This is for the Adams Lodge of Elks, number 1335, located at 63 Center Street, Adams, Mass. The change of manager from Richard Pansecki to Cynthia Krasminski. Change of club officers to Cynthia Krasminski, President Barbara Dow, Treasurer Ronald Wunderlich, Secretary Clerk Robert Dow, Director/Trustee Dale Krasminski, Director Trustee Edward Duquette Jr., Director Trustee. Okay, so we have all the information in our packet. We have our chair of our licensing committee here with us. So anything you'd like to add, Christine, or?
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, the licensing subcommittee did review the change of manager application as well as the change of club officers application that's before you for the Adams Lodge of Elks, number 1335. And our legal counsel did also check to make sure that everything is in order, as this is a complicated process. I do want to thank Deb Dunlap, who has walked the Adams Lodge of Elks through this process, as well as walking the licensing subcommittee through the process. But I can assure you that everything is in order.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
With all that, I will go ahead and, so it'll be two motions. The first one, a motion for change of manager from Richard Pansecki to Cynthia Krasminski for the Adams Lodge of Elks, number 1335.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jim. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous?
The second motion for this application is for to accept the change of club officers for the Adams Lodge of Elks, number 1335, as stated on the agenda and as read by Chairman Duval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Second by Jim. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none. Unanimous decision. Okay, next we have a facility use request for the town common, the Adams Community Bank, for Sunday, November 25th, 2018. It is 1:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. for holidays.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to grant the approval of the town common for the Adams Community Bank on Sunday, November 25th, from 1:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., and that's November 25th, 2018, for the holidays event, to be from 2 to 5 p.m.
We have a motion by Joe. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Christine. They also have horse-drawn carriages, and there may be a visit from good old St. Nick Santa Claus. So, and the lighting of the Christmas tree for the town. And it's a really exciting event. I want to thank again, as I did a couple meetings ago, the Adams Community Bank for volunteering their employees to make this happen. I've been told that Pam Duval, who has been in front of this for several years, who will be soon enjoying her retirement, has two individuals that are ready to take this over, so this event will continue in the town of Adams, so this is all good news. Do we have any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's lights on that horse-drawn carriage. The last one we had going around town had no lights. It was quite dangerous.
We can have the chief look into the carriage itself, to make sure, and talk to Pam. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to echo Chairman Duval's words on this event. It's one of my favorite in town, and it just brings some excitement into the center of our community, and I just love seeing the kids when Santa Claus arrives. So kudos to the bank, and thank you for all that you've done and continue to do.
Good. Anything else?
Question.
Sure.
Do we know who donated the tree? It's a beautiful tree. And if we could recognize,
I do not.
okay.
So as soon as we get that, we can recognize it either on the Facebook page or
Yeah,
our
And
next
send
meeting.
them a letter.
Yes,
Thank
a
you.
letter of thanks. Definitely in order, Joe. Thank you.
but it is beautiful, and so thank you to whoever donated it.
Yep.
I think it's the right size for that
It's
area
perfect.
also, yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous. Okay, there is a topic here, discussion of commercial street zoning. I think the topic is really zoning in general in our community. When I ran for election this past year, focusing on, as Jim did and as the board has been, is growing this community. And we need growth to be able to attract others from other, to move to our community, families. We also helps with the tax rate when we have growth, businesses moving in. And recently, in looking at the zoning map of the town, which was developed probably in the 70s, I would think, during the 1970s, and has not been changed since then. I believe it is now time. I've looked at some zoning areas where possibly 100 feet in from the street is commercial, and then the next 100 feet of the same parcel is residential, but there's a commercial building covering the lot. So to me, it's, I don't know how it was done back in the day, but it needs to be brought forward and brought up to date into what our goals are, is to grow this community, bring businesses into town, and we all can agree we need businesses in this community. It's up for discussion with this board. The selectmen can only request the planning board to look at the rezoning. We've had some training recently with both the zoning board, planning board, and the select board, which has initiated discussion between the zoning board and the planning board on what they would like to see changed. They have brought forward some ideas to acting town Administrator Donna Season, some ideas they would like to start to look into. So I think it's time. There's a lot of discussion happening, and I think it's time that we take a look into this. The Board of Selectmen would only start the discussion. We do not make any decisions in this until it gets to town meeting, which we are town meeting members. That's where we get to make the final decisions. But the course will run through the planning board, through the town administration, and through the zoning board to offer up to the town meeting changes in our zoning bylaws. And that's just the beginning. We also need to take a look at our charter commission in our future, but we can only do, we don't want to take on too much at this point, but that's out of date. The charter we have in this community is out of date. It just needs to be brought up to where we are today. So I bring this out for discussion with the board. Again, we just recommend the discussion to begin, and it's already started between the two boards. They've met. So we just want to make this a formal decision that, let's start talking about looking at our zoning bylaws, and we'll go through that process. And then after that, I think we continue on with charter and other policies we have in this community to set us up to be able to grow and to prosper. God knows that we deserve it and we're due for it. So I'll open that up for discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just recently, Selectman Bush and myself, we attended a meeting that was put together by the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board. And I thought it was a very fruitful meeting. A lot of situations came up that need to be addressed in this community. And so I totally agree with you, John, that it's time for us to upgrade our zoning. It's well overdue, and I think the conversation has already begun. And so I think the next process is to get a group of people together and to start looking at what we need to do. I could bring in some specifics that were mentioned, but I won't do so now. But it is long overdue, and we have to start somewhere, and I think it should start as soon as possible.
Good, thank you, Joe. Jim, anything?
I agree with what Joe said. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a pretty good meeting, actually.
Yeah, it
a
was.
real
I was
good
there.
meeting.
I was there too. It was a very good meeting. Christine?
I did not attend this fruitful meeting, but I will tell you, I mean, I think it's healthy to take a look at what we have on the books. So if the start is the zoning map, I think that it's a good time to formalize the process of reviewing. It's something that you guys have charged me with doing with the district agreement for the school district, just opening things up, taking a look at it, see what needs to be changed, if anything. So I think it's a healthy process to formalize it and ask the planning board to start looking at the zoning map.
And their meetings will be public meetings.
Right, Mr. Chairman, I have met with the planning board recently. We've had a couple of previous meetings, not that they were focused on this, but informally, we discussed about, potential changes and would they be willing to work on this. I have worked with the planning board on a number of bylaw revisions. So in this case, we also talked about the zoning map and really looking at what the zoning map is dictating in various parts of the town. So I think community development stands ready to work with the planning board. I thought this was important because often, and as required by the state enabling laws, the selectmen are one of the entities to kind of kickstart a formal review. So I wanted to have some discussion here. I think the planning board also would welcome that. Once we start this, Joe may be right, maybe it's a subcommittee. I know there's certain things, like there's been some discussion about our signage bylaws. That really takes a group, a small group, 5 people, 7 people, and you really need to work through it. I mean, it's like a year and a half long process to really do a good job. So it may be that in working with the boards, the 2 boards, maybe we'll have a handful of groups or, 2 or 3 groups working on discrete items, and then, the planning board itself working on the map issues and stuff, so.
Okay. So I think a motion in order to start this process off?
Yes, that would be good.
Okay. Do we have a motion from the board?
I will make a motion to formally ask the planning board to start the review process of the zoning map.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jim. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I wish this wasn't put on the agenda as discussion of commercial street zoning, because that kind of puts the emphasis on, Cumberland Farm, and so I think it's a lot more than just in commercial street zoning. I think it's townwide, so I just wish that the discussion was just of changing of zoning.
Right. I agree. That's where we're going to head. Good point, Joe. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Unanimous decision. Okay, next is department reports. Anna, do you have anything?
Just a kind of a quick update. Community development staff met today with representatives of Wagner Hodgkin Landscape Architects. They're out of Albany. They have been selected to begin the design process for a new park at the former Hoosick Coal and Grain site at 1 Cook Street. I think as the board recalls, this is a project funded under our 2017 Community Development Block Grant program. While working on the park design with Wagner Hodgkin, we'll also be, I think as you also know, we've received $200,000 in cleanup funds from EPA. So we're going to be, we now have our contracts with EPA. We'll be looking for a contractor to do the cleanup work. So there's a lot of moving pieces, even though it's a small 1 acre site, there's a lot of different moving pieces. Also, there's 2 buildings on the property. So one of the things that we'll be working with Wagner on, and then eventually I think we'll be hiring an architect, is what will those future uses of the buildings be, and coordinating with the park. As you know, it's a very visible site. It parallels the bike trail. It parallels Hoosick Valley Service, the train excursions. It's also on the east side. It has the flood control. So I think it presents, as a 1 acre property, a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. So this is one of the projects that I've been looking forward to. As you know, as part of our downtown development plan, which has some age on it now, but one of the recommendations was that since the bike trail was coming through, traversing our town center, we have a series of pocket parks along the trail. So this would be the third and probably the final one along the trail. I think it's maybe going to be the best one, but we're scheduled to have a kickoff meeting with the steering committee. We've got representatives of Berkshire Scenic. We've got some history teachers on the committee and stuff. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for interpretation. We hope to have that kickoff meeting early in December, and then we hope to be in a position to have a public meeting sometime toward the end of January. So.
Okay. Any questions for Donna?
Yes, just quickly, is this the first time we've dealt with Wagner and?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. They're also partnering with Ty and Bond. As you know, Ty and Bond designed Park Street, and we've done other projects with them over the years. So Ty and Bond will focus on the engineering, civil engineering part, and then Wagner, they've done a lot of beautiful park designs, a lot of interpretive work. They really believe in branding each individual park. They are really excited about the grain elevator. They just think that is something extremely unique. So it was good. Their excitement for the project was palpable today. So it's good. It'll be fun.
And what did you term them as?
Landscape architects?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering, since we're on landscape architects, we were looking one for the Adams Suffragette Centennial Celebration Committee.
Yes.
Brian Hanlon, who will be doing the statue, would be very interested in having somebody to oversee, because he's very touchy about where he puts the statues and how things look. Is there a possibility we could get some type of retainer to help us out with that, since it is a town activity?
I don't know. I mean, I've been in discussion with Attorney St. John about this, and I had committed to have kind of secured a designer. This has been something that we've known would be on community development's plate. So we are in discussions with a number of designers that we've worked with. Wagner might be one, but so I promised December 1, we'd have a decision.
All right. Well,
because I
thank
know
you.
that we need to get moving on that for Mr. Hanlon and to finish his design.
Well, that does sound exciting, because I do love that grain elevator. I think
Yeah.
it's something special.
I agree.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I was at a meeting, banquet for the Scenic Railway Saturday night, and they're quite excited about that green elevator.
Good.
And they've even talked about bringing in a grain car,
Cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities.
boxcar, so there's a lot of excitement going with that, a lot of excitement. And it's probably the most photographed thing in town.
Yeah, it's clearly a landmark, so.
Okay, anything else for Donna? All right, next is subcommittee liaison reports. Christine?
My report will be a lot shorter than last week's report. I will report out that the Personnel Subcommittee met actually just prior to this meeting. We reviewed the job application, or job descriptions, my apologies, job descriptions for the senior planner position, DPW operations supervisor, and parking enforcement officer. Those 3 positions will be coming before the full board at our, I believe, our December 5th meeting. And you'll get those ahead of time. There were a couple of revisions that just need to be made, but you'll have them probably a week before that meeting. And my other update is just a reminder from the licensing subcommittee that all renewal paperwork has been distributed, and I believe the deadline is November 28th, so that we would have them in hand to review at our next licensing subcommittee meeting on December 3rd, so that this full board can go forward with the renewal process on the 5th. So,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
I have a Berkshire Regional Planning Commission meeting tomorrow evening, and Senator Hines will be there to discuss the concerns and questions that we may have. And I, of course, have a major question and concern to speak with Senator Hines with tomorrow night, so I definitely will make sure I do that. Joe?
Yes, just quickly, I went to our meeting for the Adams Suffragette Centennial Celebration Committee, and we're still picking away at trying to make this a very successful event come 2020. Just to repeat, so everyone listening or seeing this, it will be the 200th, it would have been the 200th birthday of our own Susan B. Anthony, and it's the 100th birthday of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, and it was dubbed the Susan B. Anthony Amendment for all of her hard work to get this right for women. And so we're picking away, and we're really in need of people wishing to help volunteer. We're also in need of donors to help defray the cost of this. So if anybody out there is listening that would like to help either financially or volunteer-wise, please get a hold of Pamela St. John, or better yet, call the town office and ask for Deb, and she'll get the message along. So we're working at it, and we hope that we can prevail and put on a nice celebration for our community in 2020.
Very good. Jim?
Glen Street's coming along really great. East Road's coming along great, so that's good news for the town.
Yes, it is. Very good.
Great news. I've been working with DPW. We've had some issues with some roads in town that people are complaining about, and some potholes. Well, we're moving along with that. DPW has been really cooperative. Small crew, but they're working their butts off to correct things.
Okay, announcements and good of the order. Christie?
I'm all set.
I'm good. Joe?
Just one quick, this Saturday in Worcester at Foley Field, the Adams Football Hurricanes will be playing for the semifinals state championship against St. Bernard's of Worcester area. So if you can make it to the game, it would be good, so that people are there to cheer on our Hurricanes. And the game starts at 2 o'clock, and I wish them well. It's going to be a tough game.
Okay. Jim?
I had the opportunity last Monday to go down to the county corrections department and observe the 911 system. I was quite impressed. There's a lot going on in there. I feel for them people. That's mind-boggling. These calls start coming in, and you got to be on your toes. Split-second decisions. A lot of respect for them. And Friday night, I got to go on a ride-along, second shift with Officer Hicks of the Adams Police Department. Beginning of his shift, Officer Cunningham and Officer Hicks, I saw him book a person, incarcerate him, and I can honestly, they were very, very professional. They did a great job. All the calls that Officer Hicks went on, Officer Baker was out there backing them up, and people were pretty nasty to him at times, and they were very professional. They handled it very, very well. I was quite pleased with everything, the way they did everything.
Okay, thank you. I guess that's it. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Christine, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jim. Here, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Unanimous.